Why We See Movies podcast. I'm your host, Ron Houghton. Joining me, as always, we've got Paul.
Hey.
And Darren.
Hello.
Today, we're going to be reviewing the new Ryan Gosling film, First Man, as well as catching up with a few titles from earlier this year, John Krasinski's A Quiet Place, and Annihilation, starring Natalie Portman. Later on, we'll do our Rant and Rave segment with Paul's review of Bradley Cooper's A Star Is Born. Lots to talk about today. But first, let's see what's going on inside the entertainment world with...
News on the mark!
Hey guys.
Hey.
How are you?
Aces, you?
Not too bad. Okay, first news. I just want to talk about a couple of trailers that have come out for the upcoming fall season. First two, a couple of political films, Vice and The Front Runner. Have you guys seen the trailer for Vice? Wow, Christian Bale is doing it again. Did you recognize him?
I would not have realized until they pointed out, and I knew it at the beginning because I had seen the cast, but had I not known it was him, I would never have guessed that was Christian Bale.
He's playing Dick Cheney, I should say.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I had no idea it was him until, at the end of the trailer, they flashed people's names. I'm like, holy shit.
Well, you can pick out Sam Rockwell and Steve Carell, despite a little bit of makeup on them, but wow.
It does look really good, though.
It does look very good.
Yeah.
It looks very interesting.
Yeah, Cheney is right for an expose.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and one minor correction from earlier episode. The director of Vice, Adam McKay, I had recently mentioned that he was the one attached to the upcoming Joker film with Joaquin Phoenix. No, he's not directing that. That would be Todd Phillips, who did the Hangover movies. I seem to always be getting those two guys mixed up. Okay, the next trailer I wanted to talk about was a movie called The Front Runner. This is starring Hugh Jackman. He's playing presidential candidate Gary Hart. I think he ran in 1988 against George Bush. Yeah, I think he was famously caught in a photograph with some girl sitting on his lap, and it was on a yacht called The Monkey Business, something like that. This one looks pretty good.
Yeah, this is a story I don't really know much about, so I'm kind of interested in this film.
I remember at the time it was a big deal. It's kind of the first time journalists got into the private lives of politicians, and this kind of capsized his career for something today that seems absolutely trivial.
Almost accepted nowadays, but yeah, exactly. And I remember this being a huge deal back in the day before I even really paid attention to politics, but yeah, it really submarined this guy's political career.
Another movie that looks really good is called Beautiful Boy with Steve Carell and Timothée Chalamet from Call Me By Your Name. It's supposed to be the true story of a father and son and their relationship with his son's addiction problems. The word on this movie is outstanding. Carell's got a lot of Oscar talk going on, but it looks really good.
A lot of the talk is about the performances. I've also heard a lot of people talk about the movie is a long, tough slog to get through. A lot of dark, depressing stuff, but with these two great performances to anchor the movie. I've heard a little bit of a mixed bag about it, actually.
Yeah, it looks interesting to me. Not one that I'd rush to the theaters for personally, but it looks interesting enough that I'd want to see it.
Steve Carell's carved quite a career for himself.
Hasn't he? Yeah.
Dramatic and
he also has
roles.
that Welcome to Marwen coming this fall. So, Another one would be The Mule with Clint Eastwood. Boy, does this look good.
I'm really interested in this one.
Yeah, this looks great.
He comes out with these movies out of the blue. I hadn't even heard of it. And just like, what's this?
Takes a turn where you don't necessarily expect, but makes it a lot more interesting than where you think the story might go.
Supposedly, he said he retired from acting, but this must have been a juicy role.
Yeah, I'm glad he's doing something like this instead of yet another recent American history remake. This looks far more interesting than his last couple films.
He almost has a habit of coming out with these late-run Oscar movies and winning Best Picture for them. So we'll see.
Keeping them fresh in people's memory.
And the other big trailer was, of course, Dark Phoenix, the new X-Men movie.
I'll say it looks all right.
Exactly. It looks all right, but I'm worried that it's just going to retread ground of the X-Men movie that they tried to erase from the franchise anyways.
Right.
So hopefully it offers more new than what I suspect, but yeah, it looks okay. Didn't blow me away.
No, not by any means. I liked a lot of the design in it. It's nice to see it taking place in kind of that 80s look. There's a couple shots in the trailer with the X-Men in their classic comic book costumes that look kind of cool, but I'm not dying to see it by any stretch.
One thing I should say about the trailer is, from what little I've heard about the movie, is they're supposed to be sticking much closer to the original source material in the comics, which means a much more galactic element. They go into space. That doesn't seem to be anywhere in this trailer. So maybe what we're seeing is maybe half the film, which looks a lot more similar to what we've already seen in Last Stand, but the second half could be radically different. I'm hoping anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's all we can really hope for.
Yeah.
The one film I'm really anxious about is I'd kind of forgotten about it until you mentioned the trailer, was The Kid Who Would Be King.
Mm-hmm. Joe Cornish's film.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's coming out in January.
Yeah, I loved his film Attack the Block, and this looks sharp and witty and funny and tongue-in-cheek and yet exciting and rousing all at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the type of kids movie that adults will want to go see.
Exactly, yeah.
And if they play their cards right, I mean, I hesitate to say it, but they could get more than one movie from this cast of characters if they do it properly. But yeah, it looks really entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that looks great. Okay, on to more news. Dex, I don't know if you've heard, but Mel Gibson is set to co-write and direct a remake of one of your favorite movies of all time, The Wild Bunch.
Yeah, that is fascinating. I never knew I needed another version of The Wild Bunch, but hearing Mel Gibson behind it, I'm very, very intrigued.
Mm-hmm. He's
Very
about
intrigued.
the only person I could think of that I'd be excited about helming this.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I love The Wild Bunch and would never have thought I'd want to see a remake of it, but hearing Mel Gibson involved, yeah, I think this is very intriguing.
And to star in it, you think? He's
Probably,
perfect for it.
yeah. I mean, it's about aging old gunslingers who are past their prime, and he's the right age to do that now. He could be Pike Bishop easily.
Mm-hmm. You got to hope that's going to be good, because you're right. It's treading on sacred ground.
For sure.
And Paul, the new Star Wars series has its title,
Sure does.
The Mandalorian.
Sure is.
So I think we know kind of what it's going to be. What do you think?
I think it's got a lot of promise. Dave Filoni, who is behind Clone Wars and Rebels, is going to be directing the first episode, so that's interesting. They've got a slate of well-known directors for other episodes, which sounds really interesting, like a lot of notable women directors and such, so I think it could take this series into a lot of really interesting places, something a little more different than maybe what we've seen before. I hope it's an area that we haven't seen and they don't just try to bring in familiar characters for the sake of making it easy for people to relate. I want to see new characters in new areas of the universe. Yeah, it looks good.
Yeah, having recently seen the trailer for the series The Resistance, which did not compel me to want to watch the show at all, I'm very intrigued by The Mandalorian.
I don't know if I'll have a chance to see it. It's going to be set up for Disney's streaming service.
We'll get it eventually.
Yep.
Okay, looks like Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow movie is finally moving forward. She got a $15 million payday, one of the biggest for an actress. I think she deserves it.
She deserves it fully, and that this movie deserves to be made finally.
Yeah, I think this movie should have been made a long time ago and hopefully shed some light into some of her secret past and kind of gives us a little more insight into who she is today.
It's almost good that it's taken this long to make this movie, because there's been a lot of setup for the dark past of her character, just touched on enough in some of the past MCU films that it really intrigues you about where does she come from and what has she done. I'm glad to see we're going to finally find out.
Yep.
And I hope they keep it kind of low-key. I think it should be treated almost like a Bourne movie. Like a spy movie, not too much spectacle.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. I want to see a spy thriller.
2020, maybe? Okay, that's it for news this week. Let's begin our first review. First Man.
The vehicle's not safe.
We need to fail. We need to fail down here so we don't fail up there.
Please let the light that shines on me. Neil, everyone's in agreement. We'd like you to command. Shine on the one I love.
Mom, what's wrong?
Nothing, honey. Your dad's going to the moon.
Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin.
We have a go for main engine start. T-10.
The entire world's watching.
9. 8.
Do you question whether the program's worth the cost?
7.
In money and in lives?
6. 5.
What are the chances you're not coming back?
4.
Those kids, they don't have a father anymore.
3.
So you're gonna sit the boys down,
2.
and you're gonna prepare them for the fact you might not ever come home.
1.
First Man is written and directed by Damien Chazelle, stars Ryan Gosling, Claire Foy, and Kyle Chandler. First Man tells the tale of Neil Armstrong's historic journey to become the first man to walk on the moon. Darren, what'd you think of it?
I liked it. Fair deal. It's not going to be my front runner for top movie of the year by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a very good biopic, really, at its heart. It's really about Neil Armstrong. We've had a lot of movies and documentaries about the space program over the years. A lot of aspects of this story that we kind of already know, but we don't know a lot about Neil Armstrong. He's always kind of been an enigma. He's never really done interviews and never really allowed people to know what he is and who he is and what his life was like. And this movie, whether you believe certain things in it or not, really lets you examine what drove him and what his character was and who he was as a person. And Ryan Gosling was great.
A very insular guy.
Very low-key performance.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of it is told from his point of view. You know what I mean? The film doesn't open up very much. It's all kind of almost a claustrophobic movie.
Yeah, it is.
And
it's not an epic at all, like The Right Stuff or something like
even
that.
Apollo 13.
No,
I found it's kind of funny for a mission that failed has a much more emotional impact than this one, where it's the mission that succeeds, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't love this movie. I liked it, but didn't love it. That's for sure. It is different from what I thought it was.
It is, yeah. I mean, I don't know what I was expecting exactly, but it's definitely worth seeing. And we're seeing it in the theater. There's some spectacular sequences here. Me and Megan were really running into traffic problems yesterday trying to make our way to the Northwest to see it. Literally 3 different collisions on 52nd Street, then Deerfoot, and then on McKnight. That we were scheduled for the 3:50 show. We had tickets, and at 4:03, when we were pulling up into the parking lot, we were saying, like, hopefully it's still just commercials and trailers. And luckily it was, because that opening sequence is spectacular.
Right.
And if I had missed that, I'd be upset. There's some spectacular sequences in this that I think probably recreate what that kind of high-speed, high-altitude flight is like better than any other film has ever done.
From his point of view.
Yeah, there's some thrilling, spectacular sequences in this film, which are almost as much, if not more reason to see it than the Neil Armstrong story.
Right. It's kind of strange. It's everything about it is so low key. It's almost like they don't want to celebrate what an accomplishment it was.
No, and it's not really a celebration of that at all. It's less about what America did than what this man did and why he did it.
Right. There's a moment where his wife says, when I first married this guy, I just was looking for a stable guy. You know, I didn't know he was going to be an astronaut. But when you think about it, he is the most stable person in the world, this guy. That's why they chose him.
Yeah.
He is so unflinching, flappable. Nothing really upsets this guy.
Just direct and no nonsense, and maybe a little emotionally cold. And I've no doubt that the real Neil Armstrong was like that. It feels like it's a well-researched portrayal by Ryan Gosling.
Must say the portrayal of Buzz Aldrin isn't too flattering.
No, and I think that's a little accurate too. It feels like I've read some stuff about him where he's kind of been forthright and direct about certain things like that. And I mean, he's made news in ways that Neil Armstrong never has. And
I've heard he was cantankerous, but he comes across as an asshole.
A little bit of an asshole, yeah. He tells the truth and he tells it like he sees it. So
that's true. Yeah. Corey Stoll plays him. It's a good job. It is good. It's kind of like Dunkirk. I think I went in expecting more of a bigger, typical Hollywood type entertainment, and that's not what this is.
No. Yeah. Even those flight sequences that I mentioned, they're not marvels of special effects, but I think that's because they feel so real, because they're so effects heavy. They have to be. They just feel like this is what it's like. And they're pretty great to see on the big screen. But yeah, no, it's not a great film, but a good film.
Yeah, a little too long though, too.
It is.
I could have cut about 20 minutes, half an hour out of it.
Easily, yeah. It is a little over long for sure. I mean, we get it. He's cold and emotionless. There's a few scenes that could definitely have hit the cutting room floor.
Yeah. A good film, but not a great one in my opinion.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to our next one. That would be A Quiet Place.
Military fighting a massive invasion. Around the world. Total devastation.
We have to protect them. Promise me.
I promise.
Quiet Place was written by Brian Woods and Scott Beck. It was directed by John Krasinski. It stars Krasinski, Emily Blunt, and Millicent Simmons. The plot: a family must keep their wits and stay absolutely silent in order to avoid a race of mysterious creatures who hunt their prey using sonic vibrations. Paul, you checked out this one. What'd you think?
I have. I love this movie. I think, it really sets the tone extremely early on. I rewatched this movie to get ready for this podcast just because I had seen it 2 months ago and just wanted to refresh my memory. And there's something that happens early on that I thought happened later in the story. But yeah, it sets the tone immediately and you kind of know what you're in for. And it's thrilling. It's suspenseful. I found it extremely clever. The sound design has to be strong in a movie like this that doesn't have a lot of spoken dialogue. And I felt it was. I thought the score was great, which I'm sure you'll speak a little bit more to, Dex. And I thought the acting was great on all accounts. The fact that there's not a lot of spoken dialogue, yet they convey their emotions and intent very well. And so many memorable scenes in this movie. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Darren, what did you think of it?
I also really love this movie. It's up there. It's the kind of horror thriller that works for me. I've watched, so many trailers recently for other horror movies, and when you watch some of these, they rely so heavily on the shock scare, and we've seen enough of these. We know when the shock scare is coming, and yeah, they surprise us because they're loud on the soundtrack and something has just jumped in front of us. But a movie like this, which I'll compare it to a couple of other recent favorite horror thrillers of mine, The Woman in Black and It Comes at Night, and all three of them rely so heavily on creating such a sense of dread and and The Witch is another one too, such a palpable atmosphere and intensity, and you're unsettled. All four of these movies keep you unsettled and on edge all throughout, not because you're waiting for the next shock scare, but because of the atmosphere that they've created. And what an original idea for a horror movie too. I mean, it comes down to, sure, like a monster in the house type movie, but the abilities of the monster, I will say, is unlike any I can think of that I've seen in a horror movie. It's great. It's thrilling. It's intense. It's a family film at the heart too. And the family is going through some tough things, very tough things. I mean, you can see where so many of the characters are coming from in their approach to what they're doing and the life they're forced to live here. And I like the fact that this movie doesn't beat you over the head with plot and exposition. It just throws you in this world and this is how these people are living. We don't know why. You don't know why. Deal with it as they are.
And such strong emotional beats at certain parts of the movie too. That's one thing that always helps me with a horror movie is you're actually invested in the characters. It's not just horrific things happening to a group of people on the screen. You actually care about these people.
Yeah, I liked it. I didn't love it. I thought it was effective, but that's it. It didn't really stay with me after it was over. I did appreciate, as opposed to First Man, he understands the limitation of what he's dealing with. It has a nice brisk running time. It's no more than like 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Which is all
it's
it
just
needs.
Perfect. Yeah.
And I understand Krasinski, I think his motivations for doing the film were he's just become a new father. And all the pressures of being a new father that were placed on him were just so much that he got it out with this story and the script. Imagine what this father, the pressures he's under.
Yeah.
Never being able to rest, really.
Right.
Yeah.
So that all works for me. Emily Blunt is really good. She's the standout. Yeah. Effective scenes, but there's a few moments where if I was in their situation, I would have come up with a few alternatives by then.
A couple
they
things
never
bothered
used
me.
Distractions. You could throw something somewhere and let them chase after it to avoid them at some times.
And you'd think you'd have done something about that fucking nail on the stairs ages ago.
And the fact that if you're dealing with creatures that use sound, that you would think a massive amount of sound could be something that you might want to,
overload them.
Right. So there were a few times where I was thinking the family could have been a little smarter. Still, the movie's so effective at what it's doing, you don't really have time to think about it.
I mean, this movie got a lot of attention when it opened in the theater because of its small, limited budget. It made a huge amount of money. It was very successful, very critically successful, and I'm glad I finally caught up with it. Like you, Paul, I might be buying this on Blu-ray myself. I really enjoyed it.
I'm not sure if I'm happy that it's getting a sequel. Sometimes a self-contained story one-off is good enough. I'm not sure I need...
It's pretty perfect, but John Krasinski, if he's still involved as director and you have the same writers, then I'm hoping they want to make a sequel for the right reasons, that they have a good continuation to the story.
Or maybe even a few set pieces that they didn't have a chance to work out.
Exactly.
In many ways, this movie kind of reminded me of an extended, remember War of the Worlds, the basement scene? It's kind of like the whole movie is like that.
Yeah. Or like Signs even to a certain extent. Yeah, I liked it quite a bit.
Yeah, worth seeing, and most people have, so I do recommend it. Okay, on to the next movie. That would be Annihilation.
Your husband's here.
Let me see him.
He's extremely ill.
You have to tell me where he was, what he was doing.
It was his decision to go in. It's something they termed the Shimmer. We've sent in drones and teams of people, but nothing comes back.
But something has.
You're a biologist. You served in the military.
If I knew what happened, I could save his life.
The boundary's getting bigger, it's expanding. We're talking cities, states.
You need to know what's inside. So do I.
Annihilation was written and directed by Alex Garland. It stars Natalie Portman, Tessa Thompson, Jennifer Jason Leigh, and Oscar Isaac. The plot? A meteorite crashes, creating a strange domed energy field. When an isolated soldier returns with a strange virus, his scientist wife volunteers to go back inside to hopefully find a cure for his illness. Darren, what did you think of Annihilation?
I like this movie a fair deal. I was very excited about it, especially after Ex Machina, his previous film as director, Alex Garland. It looked like a very interesting, thoughtful science fiction movie, as Ex Machina was, and it is. And it also works, I wouldn't call the movie a thriller, but it has a couple of pretty thrilling, exciting scenes in it. The setup for the movie maybe led me to believe it would be a little more profound than it was. It's got a satisfying ending, and there's some very interesting ideas it explores. It doesn't rise to the heights of, say, an Arrival as far as recent science fiction goes, but it's very good. If you're a science fiction fan, you'll find a lot to enjoy in Annihilation.
Paul?
Yeah, I echo that a lot. I expected it to be a little more on the profound level, like an Arrival, because that knocked it out of the park for me. I thought visually this was fantastic. I really wish I had been able to catch up with this in its limited theatrical release, because some of the visual effects later on in the movie are really, really dynamic and interesting. Yeah, I was on board with the journey of the characters from the beginning, and they cover some really interesting subject matter and concepts, and I really enjoyed it. A little bit more of a hard sci-fi aspect to it. Thought all the performances were really well done and thoroughly enjoyable.
Nice cast. Good idea with having the all-female protagonists going into the area, going into the blob.
Yeah, for me, this movie started out interesting and got less so as it went along. I thought the first half was quite good, and then once the monsters start appearing, the mutated monsters, so to speak, it got less interesting for me. And in the end, if there was an overall meaning or theme, I missed it. You're right. There's nothing quite profound at the end.
No, it's more interesting on, I'd say, a plot or story level than on a thoughtful thematic level. But it is interesting in that regard.
It is.
I liked how...
And visually striking, too. I would say I recommend it, but I didn't like it nearly as much as his last film, Ex Machina, which I thought was brilliant.
There were some standout scenes. I thought the scene where they're strapped to the chair, I don't want to say too much more than that. I thought that was really tense and interesting, something a little new that I haven't seen.
I agree.
Yeah, I thought there were some really nice moments of tension. I enjoyed it enough that I might end up owning it, but not nearly the impact that I guess I was ultimately hoping for.
And I like the idea of, like a prism combining and splitting light. It combines and splits DNA just to give viewers a little bit of an idea of what goes on inside the blob or the prism in the movie. And so you have these kind of weird hybrid human, plant, animal hybrids as the DNA of anything living inside the prism kind of splits and combines. And I thought that was a clever idea, and it led to some cool things. I liked the thrilling scenes, the chair scene, as you said, Paul, and some of these mutated creatures. I like those ideas, actually.
By the time it came down to the final relationship between Portman and Oscar Isaac, I think I was expecting a little bit more.
I was hoping for more there, too. Satisfying enough on a story level, thematically. Yeah, like I said, not as profound as something like Arrival. But
right, or something. I had heard that it had shades of Andrei Tarkovsky's Stalker. The movie came out in 1979, which is very similar about this strange alien field that shows up and people who go inside and what happens. And that movie is far more enigmatic, and when it's over, you're thinking about it for the rest of the day. This movie was just kind of, okay.
No, it's a good science fiction film. I recommend it, but yeah.
Me too. Yeah, unfortunately, I wasn't thrilled with all three of our features today, but they were all good.
All good. For me, A Quiet Place would be the standout of the three.
Yeah, me too. Well, not having seen First Man, but yeah, I thoroughly recommend A Quiet Place.
Me too, actually. That's my favorite of those. Okay, let's move on to our Rant and Rave segment. Darren.
I'll start out with a movie that I've had on my PVR for a few years. I recorded it off of the Movie Network. It might have still been Movie Central at the time. That's how long it's been on my PVR. It's called Boy in the World. The synopsis given to me by the Movie Central is, a young fatherless boy leaves home and goes out into the world. And I checked out a few reviews, really skimmed those reviews, but there was a lot of very good praise for this film. So I recorded it, finally watched it. One thing I totally missed from any of those reviews is that it's animated. So I had no idea when I turned this on and it was going to be animated. They got the plot a little bit wrong on Movie Central. The boy has a father. The father leaves home ostensibly to look for work, and the boy soon gets lonely, misses his father, and goes out looking for him. It's a very simple film, very simplistically told, very simplistically animated. It's Brazilian. Paul, I think you'd really like this film. It looks as if it was animated by an 8 or 9-year-old child. Very simple, almost looks like crayons, pencil crayons, a few store-bought paints, like that kind of watercolor, oil paint, store-bought oil paint look to it. There's definitely some computer assist in some scenes, as every animated film has these days, but it all works. There's some found stuff, like cut out of newspapers and magazines. It's not subtitled. I don't think it needs to be. I don't know if any of the characters in the film are speaking a real language. I mean, maybe if I'm that ignorant and I'm not identifying Brazilian Portuguese, okay, I'm sorry, but the kid never says a word in the movie. Some of the adults talk here and there, but it feels like their speech is just expressing emotion. It doesn't feel like a real language to me. It doesn't sound like Brazilian Portuguese to me. I hope I'm not wrong about that. It's a movie that gets its best payoff at the end. It has some profound things to say about life, and it really makes you think about your own life and what you've done and where you're going, and if you have children, what they're going to do with their lives. The boy, when he leaves home, he's in a rural environment and he goes home to looking for his father. He spends time at a cotton plantation with the rural workers just picking cotton. He moves on to the city where he hits a textile mill, and hey, all this cotton is now being processed into textiles, and there's a lot of interaction there with some of the workers. And he works with an old man at the cotton farm. A younger man kind of takes him through what I assume to be Sao Paulo, Brazil. Then he sees some of the textiles become clothing, and some of the film feels like it takes place in the 60s. Some of it feels futuristic. There's definite criticisms on the way we treat the environment and the way we treat workers. And it's, a pro-worker movie. It's a pro-humanization movie. It's anti-big business, big industry. And it's all told from the point of view of this child. And then, like I said, at the end, some interesting things happen. Revelations about the boy in his life. Not a great movie. It doesn't move you. When I say profound, it won't move you like, say, Coco moves audiences. It's not a touching movie in that way, but it's very interesting. It's got its own little profound nature to it. I recommend Boy in the World, especially if you're an animation fan.
It sounds interesting to me.
Mm-hmm. My second rave will be for a movie called Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool. Mm-hmm. Have you seen it, Ron?
I have.
Yeah. Not a great movie, but very good. Very good performance from Annette Bening.
I watched everything that Annette Bening is in.
Yeah, she's a great actress. And here, of course, it's a biopic about Gloria Graham. I guess most people would know Gloria Graham as the sex pot in It's a Wonderful Life.
Probably.
Yeah.
She's been great in so many other things.
So much more. A lot of, film noir and other films. She was a wonderful actress of Hollywood's golden age. Oscar winner, yeah. Annette Bening is playing her towards the end of her life here in a true story where she gets into a relationship with a very young man played by Jamie Bell. He's also very good in this film. It treats such a May-December romance in a very intelligent, thoughtful way. The boy's family is completely on board with it. His parents are not shocked or angered by his involvement with his older woman. They're supportive. There's better movies about old Hollywood and better biopics of great actors or actresses, but it's a very good one. And if you're a fan of Hollywood's golden age or old storytelling and some of what I never knew about this aspect of Gloria Graham's life until I saw this movie at all. It's very interesting, and I definitely recommend it for movie fans.
Mm-hmm.
Check it out.
I recommend it too.
Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool.
Yeah, it's really good. Mm-hmm. Annette Bening is just one of the great actresses.
Wonderful performance here.
Yeah, can't go wrong. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go next. My first rave is for a movie called Game Night. Came out earlier this year. It's directed by John Francis Daley and Jonathan Goldstein. It stars Jason Bateman and Rachel McAdams. The plot: a couple's regular game night is thrown into chaos when their murder mystery party becomes all too real. I like this movie a lot. I am a huge Jason Bateman fan. This guy has been killing it for like 15 years now and just plays the straight guy so well. And he's terrific in this one too. And Rachel McAdams is fantastic. They really carried this movie as this couple who you can believe that at least all the craziness going on around them, that they're a real couple and they're acting appropriately.
I love both of them.
Kyle Chandler is in it in the supporting role. So is Jesse Plemons. Again, as a creepy neighbor. He's so good in it. And I don't really want to tell you too much about the plot. Let's just say, you kind of know basically what they think is going to be a normal game night turns into something different and I don't want to spoil the surprises.
I've been very interested since it first opened and got really good attention, really good reviews, and I look forward to it.
Yeah, it's short and sweet, knows what it's doing, and has a lot of laughs. It's well worth the watch. Okay, my next one is a movie I came across on TCM. Had never heard about it, but being a movie buff, it was called Harold and Lillian, A Hollywood Love Story. So I thought I'd check it out. It's a documentary from 2015, directed by a guy named Daniel Rame, and it tells the tale of a beloved Hollywood power couple, Harold and Lillian Michelson, who worked behind the scenes of the movie industry for 6 decades. Harold was a storyboard artist who later became a production designer, and Lillian was a research assistant and then curator of her own library. These two guys worked on so many films, mostly uncredited too. I'll just name a few. Ben-Hur, To Catch a Thief, The Apartment, Spartacus, Cape Fear, Cleopatra, Fiddler on the Roof, Chinatown, Raging Bull, Rocky, Star Trek, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Spaceballs, Dick Tracy, The Last Emperor, and The Godfather 3.
Wow.
That's a big chunk of movie, time that these guys have been working, and wow. Harold has passed a few years ago, so the documentary is mostly told through Lillian's eyes, and she's somewhat the semi-narrator of it. And anyways, they're just a fascinating couple. They have tons of great Hollywood stories. Harold worked with Hitchcock on The Birds and Marnie and has a fantastic story of Hitchcock editing in a screening room while watching Rushes. It's amazing. They're somewhat famous. They were the king and queen in Shrek. If you ever watched that movie,
really?
They're modeled after them. Lillian, in her research, got to know so many people when she was doing her research for Scarface. She was meeting with real drug cartel leaders and going to Colombia. And it's just two really unique people that you'd never heard of before behind the scenes that Hollywood all knew about and were dying to work with. Lillian's library went from MGM to AFI to American Zoetrope to Paramount to DreamWorks, where it finally landed. Spielberg specifically wanted her. And yet for all the movie lore that I love that drew me to it, it's really about this great enduring marriage in Hollywood and why their marriage works. And you just love them as a couple. At the end of this documentary, you just adore them. One other thing is the whole story is told through storyboards. So when they go back in time and talk about how they met and everything, it's all done through animated movie storyboards, which is a nice touch.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. It sheds a light on two people I'd never heard of.
Yeah, sounds fascinating.
Anyways, I highly recommend it. Harold and Lillian, A Hollywood Love Story. I have one more thing to talk about. This would be a new series from Amazon Prime. It is called Forever. It stars Maya Rudolph and Fred Armisen. It was created by Matt Hubbard and Adam Young. It also has supporting roles by Catherine Keener, Julia Ormond, and Peter Weller. I'll give you my synopsis. Rudolph and Armisen star as a married couple who are forced to take their eternal vows of marriage very seriously. I like this. Maybe I appreciated it more than liked it. Without giving too much away, if you're a stickler for not knowing anything about a show before going in, maybe turn this off. But otherwise, let's just say the first 2 episodes, it meanders and you're kind of like, where's the show going? And then let's just say at the end of the first episode, one of them dies. And the next episode, the other one does. So you get the idea of a couple who in heaven, I don't know if they call it heaven or not, but wherever they are, they're still together and still forced to try to get along as a couple. I'm a big fan of both of these guys. Armisen especially usually makes me laugh all the time. This show, it's more, I don't know, maybe more contemplative than funny. It has its moments, but it's really more about the idea of marriage and the afterlife and what your vows really mean to each other in the eternal. If you're interested in that type of thing, check it out. I think you'll know in a few episodes whether it's for you or not. Yeah, I would recommend it. Not a glowing recommendation, but I do appreciate it for being different. Okay, Paul, what do you have for your rant and rave?
All right, first up, as Ron mentioned earlier, I was fortunate enough to catch up with the most recent incarnation of A Star is Born. I'll fully cop to the fact that I haven't seen the previous 3. This is directed by Bradley Cooper, stars Cooper, and Lady Gaga, and what a star-making performance in my mind of Lady Gaga. I've never seen her act before. I know she's been included in some TV series in the past, etc., but I've never seen her actually act. phenomenal. It's the story of a woman who's just kind of making ends meet, helping support her father, just not really catching the break. She's extremely talented and just kind of meets up with this musical icon who appreciates her talent and gets romantically involved with him a little bit, and that launches her career, and it explores the dynamic between Bradley Cooper's character and Lady Gaga's character. And the little bit I know of Lady Gaga, I can see them tailoring the story to mimic some of the challenges she had coming up through the music industry to some degree. Heartbreaking, engaging, fantastic. I loved it. And it made me really interested to check out the previous incarnations of this because I love this so much. I would be astounded if this wasn't nominated for a few Oscars.
The reviews on it are fantastic. I really do want to see this. It's supposed to be really good.
Yeah, I'll watch it someday for sure, too. I think I've only seen the 1937, I think it is, version.
The Janet Gaynor?
Yeah, I think that's the only one I've seen.
It's good. The Judy Garland one is really good, too.
I'm not seeing that one.
That's the one. I think it's 56 with her and James Mason. I've never seen the Barbra Streisand version, so I can't comment on that one. I think they're all very different stories. Like the Judy Garland one is about Hollywood.
Yeah.
The Streisand one is more about the music industry, like this one.
Of all of them, the little bit I knew about the previous incarnations going in, you could see Chris Christopherson and Barbra Streisand a little bit in Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga's characters, so it might lean on that version a little bit more. But thoroughly worth checking out. This is one movie that the trailer looked fantastic, but having been let down by so many trailers in the past, I was like, well, let's wait and see. And once I heard some of the positive reviews, my wife and I made a point of going out to seeing it, and extremely glad we did.
Yeah, I really can't wait to see it. I might be seeing it in the theater soon.
Yeah.
And for Bradley Cooper's directing debut, he's supposed to have done a great job.
Yeah, I have absolutely no complaints about anything he did in this, and there's nothing that I would say that I would do differently or that I think maybe it ran too long. Nothing. I think it encapsulated the story exactly as I felt it should have. It was great.
Can't wait.
Second is Season 1 and 2 of American Horror Story, which, funny enough, that's another series that Lady Gaga was involved in. She was in Freak Show, which I think is Season 4. This series from FX has a lot of potential, and it kind of suffers from the same thing that I always talk about with the Netflix Marvel, where there's just too many episodes, and so they kind of get off track. The series, it's very clever. Each season reinvents itself, even though some of the actors might be the same. Like Jessica Lange is the centerpiece of almost all the seasons, and each season delves into a different element of horror. Season 1 is called Murder House, gets a little bit into ghost stories, and it's very clever and was very well done. The ending didn't really land for me. Then season 2, it deals with an asylum and gets into Catholicism and possession and exorcism, and there's a very powerful exorcism scene early on in the season that I thought worked great, but it really suffered from being 13 episodes. I felt could have been a really strong 8 episodes, 9 episodes. It's entertaining enough that I still want to keep watching the series, because when they hit the high marks really well, but there's just a lot of things in there that I just feel could be cut out.
Yeah, I can't comment. I've not seen any of it, but a lot of the people I do know who have already watched it say that, yeah, each season tends to start out really strong and then drag and get too long, and that after about 2 or 3 seasons, quality goes down.
I'm going to catch up with all of them, because apparently, even though each season is its own isolated tale, the newest season, Apocalypse, ties them together a little bit. So I'm curious to see how they do that. And there's some great acting in here too. But yeah, unfortunately, it's not really a strong RANT and not really a strong RAVE. I've heard that season 2 is the weakest of them all, but season 3 so far is kind of a Mean Girls meets Harry Potter meets Clueless, which doesn't really speak to me, and hoping it gets better. It's got some great actors like Angela Bassett's in it, Kathy Bates is in it, and it's very much, season 3 is very much a voodoo versus witchcraft. So it's kind of building, hopefully more interesting than the first couple episodes have been. Yeah, it's a fun watch, if nothing else. And then number 3, to end on a resounding high note. I know I've raved about this series in the past, and I will continue to echo the accolades for The Expanse. I'm catching up on season 2 again. It picks up exactly where season 1 leaves off. The quality doesn't dip at all. It looks fantastic. It's intelligent storytelling, acting, and the story doesn't always go where you think it's going to go. It leads you one way way where you think, okay, well, this is where we get predictable, and it does a 180, and it's phenomenal. If you haven't seen The Expanse, watch it, and it's recently was saved by Amazon.
I heard that.
Because after 3 extremely successful seasons, Sci-Fi decided they didn't want to make the show anymore, but fortunately the production company owned every asset to create the show, so they said, okay, well, we know that one of the higher-ups in Amazon is a fan, so they lobbied this gentleman that works for Amazon, and it found a new home in Amazon.
Is all seasons available now on Amazon?
Not yet, but I'm hoping that to build up for season 4 that they will release.
I really look forward to checking
Yeah, me too, but I want to start from scratch.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I don't think there's any reason to not do that.
No, right. You'd be a fool if you didn't start from scratch. You'd be lost.
Right.
Yeah, if you haven't seen The Expanse, catch up with it. It's phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. Look forward to it.
Sounds good. That was The Expanse, and I forgot everything else.
A Star is Born, right. American Horror Story Season 1 and 2, and The Expanse Season 2.
All right. Shall we wrap it up?
Let's do it.
Okay, next time we'll be back to do one of our specials. This one devoted to the best films of the 1970s. Until then, please subscribe and give us a rating on our iTunes, Apple Podcasts. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if interested, you can always comment and search for our past reviews at our website, whyweseemovies@libsyn.com. Thanks for listening, and take care out there.
So long.
Ciao, ciao for now.
Adios.